And we are live. Welcome to the podcast, Letoya Johnstone.
Oh, thank you so much, my darling. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. I've been really looking forward to having you on the podcast, and allow me to introduce the viewers to you. I wish to officially introduce you properly. So, Letoya Johnstone is the first person in Africa.
Allow me to introduce
I'm sorry, Letoya, you have to.
you. I wish to officially introduce you properly.
Sorry, I can
So,
hear
Letoya
myself. Do you
Johnstone
want
is the first
to
person in
stop playing it
Africa.
on YouTube?
I'm sorry, Letoya, you have
Huh?
to. I wish to
You have to
officially
stop
introduce you
playing
properly.
the,
Sorry,
the
I can
video
hear
on
myself.
YouTube.
Do you want to
I will send you the
stop playing
recording.
it on YouTube?
No, I'm not playing it on YouTube.
Ah,
You have to
okay.
stop playing the video on YouTube.
I'm not
I will
playing.
send.
Ah, okay. So I think it was on my end. I am so sorry. So we have to start this again. And I see there's already a live viewer. I'm sorry, it was on my end. So
Okay,
welcome to the 24th episode of Diversity with Diana. We are so honored to have you here. And allow me to introduce you again.
thank you.
So karibu sana, karibu sana. Then I lost it. Okay.
Um,
No, don't worry, don't worry. So Letoya Johnstone is the first person in Africa to be named Transgender Fashion Icon by BBC World because of her sharp eye of fashion and including the minorities and the marginalized communities in the fashion scenes. Before Letoya's tireless efforts, there were no models living with disability or LGBTQ models included in the fashion industry. Let's start from the beginning. Letoya Johnstone is a diploma holder of social work and a transgender peer educator, a trainer of trainees, trained by the branch of Kenyan Ministry of Health, NASCOP, which is National AIDS and STI Control Program. She is a trained HIV and AIDS counseling psychologist and a community champion for transgender community. Letoya notes that transgender persons are not intersex, and she will engage me today in the understanding of the gender norms, the importance of inclusion of transgender persons in the healthcare system, public spaces, and census. So, Letoya, allow me to give you time now to properly introduce yourself. What have I left out?
I think you've really said so much that it's really
Mhm.
amazing. Maybe just to add on to it, I'm also a catwalk coach and I am also a backstage creative director and a fashion stylist who is one of the contributors for the newspapers, that is the Nairobian. But also, I've worked with different magazines, and recently I was one of the jury for the African Art Media Awards that was held in the United Kingdom. Yes,
Mhm. Wow,
yes.
that is so impressive, and I am so happy again that you're here. So let's just get right into it. I just noted that when I was reading your introduction, you actually
Yes,
say that transgender people are not intersex people. Could you
yes.
clarify that, or could you please educate me and my audience on what intersex is and what transgender is?
Yes. So there has always been a bit of confusion. Whenever you tell somebody that you are a transgender woman, they always tend to think that you've got two genitalia, which is not the truth. So anyway, who is a transgender person? A transgender person is a person who was either born male or female and assigned male or female at birth. But while they are growing up, they came to realize that they were born in the wrong body. So this makes the brain sex and the sex that they were assigned at birth completely different. And this one influences their gender roles, including the gender norms that they always possess. Because whenever we are talking about gender, it is how you express yourself. So a
Yes.
transgender woman is always a woman, so will always be expressing themselves. However, intersex persons is a little bit complicated that I do believe that an intersex person is the one who can basically explain. However, with my enough or rather little knowledge, it is that a transgender person is an individual that has got an ambiguity. And
Mm.
this ambiguity could come in the form of being born with the two genitalia or you are either born male, but then in the inside you might possess a womb, or you might be born female and then in the inside you might actually be having ambiguity that can actually make you male or female. So most people think that transgender person have got two genitalias, but that is not true. When you are born either male or female, it means, and also when you are born male or female and assigned male or female at birth, it means that everything that is in you are of a male or of an individual that is female. So a transgender man means that they were born women, just like Diana is a woman now. However, when they are growing up, they realize that, or you start noticing that you are more like in the wrong body. You ought to have been in the body of a woman, but due to a lot that we cannot go into now. So the sex that is in your brain, you see you are a woman. You were born a woman. The only difference is that the body that you present is the one of a man or of a woman. So that's the difference between transgender and intersex person.
Yes, so that then brings me to the next question, which is, at what age or at what point did you notice that the gender assigned to you was not what is authentically you? That's at what point did you notice that? Because you say, you were born male, and then you realized at some point that this is not who I am. Your mind was in conflict. You are not feeling like, let's say, being the male gender that had been assigned to you. So at what age did you decide? And then not decide, but when did you discover, or when did you begin noticing? And then how did you now start communicating to maybe the people around you, and then eventually to the world, to say, I am Letoya Johnstone and I identify as a female transgender woman?
All right. So while I was growing up, I was a woman. I could play with the girls. There was no problem. I was wearing girls' clothes, but that might have also contributed with the fact that I was coming from a poor background. And as you know, most of the girls were the ones who were before me. And for that reason, their clothes were what I could always use to dress in. As you know, in the African culture, or rather, not all African cultures, but my home, when you're coming from poverty, you don't choose what to wear. They just want to cover you up.
And your older siblings were girls?
Yes, most of them were girls. So one thing that is happening is that I was always wearing as a girl, and this one has nothing to do with my gender or sexuality. I want people to know that. While growing up, I was always a woman. Even the people that I could play with, even the way I could really do the gender roles, like cleaning the house, taking care of people, doing the cooking, I had started doing them from when I was young. In fact, when I was 9 years old, I started working as a housemaid. And while I was working as a housemaid, I could always wear dresses when it is needed. Dressing was not really a big deal. However, while I was in high school, you see now attraction starts to happen. And whenever attraction starts to happen, then you start waking up. But then people start to get to know who they are or start questioning when you are like around 12 years old. Because then people start to want you to conform to the gender that you are assigned to at birth. You are supposed to wear trousers, you're supposed to go to the boys' schools, you are supposed to put on clothes like men, you understand me, or the male figure. And in primary, I just knew that is a school uniform, because nobody teaches you about school and everything. It is a uniform and you're supposed to be like this, but that did not change how you present yourself. So it wasn't really such a big deal to me. But then when I was getting into high school, Then I was asked to stop behaving like a girl. Those could have been the questions that could have been there. So people could really go to my parents and tell them that people are saying that your child is a woman.
Wow.
So your parents start to beat you up or start to tell you things, thinking that they are fixing you, thinking that they are correcting you. Or they start praying for you, they start asking you not to do that. They tell you things like, you are embarrassing us in the community. You are embarrassing me whenever I go to school. You are embarrassing me whenever I come for, whenever Parents' Day is called on to, and then everybody just talking about how you are walking, how you are speaking, how you are carrying yourself. Can't you just be masculine? So it's more like they want you to behave like your father.
Wow.
But I never conformed to that. I was always being me. So it never even crossed my mind. Even when I was in high school, I remember my name was Pamela.
Wow.
Yeah.
In high school already?
In high school already. So after high school now, then the pressure started coming in, and it was crazy because then you are expected to fix the gender roles that are always assigned to a male figure. So that's when things went mayhem. But yes, at around 12, you start to kind of get to know because people are talking. But at the age of 15 going to 16, because then by that time you start liking boys. You cannot talk and you cannot say. But even if you have somebody who also likes you, you can't say anything because growing up in pure background of poverty, that means extreme village. And for that reason, you can't talk about sex. You could not talk about, because sex was actually perceived to be uncouth and was only for married people, not knowing that other people could be doing it. So it took me quite some time too. Yes.
Wow, okay, so that's interesting. And when did you come out to the public? Because, I mean, when we look at our African culture, it is true that sex is something that is forbidden. Ideally, it is forbidden. It's not even that when you turn 18, you are then able to have sex, or 21. It's actually very forbidden. And it's, you do it in marriage, in the sanctity, or, in marriage. And so that one is well understood. But then, you tell us at 12, you began to notice that there's something different. And then at 15 to 16, you are now very sure that you're more aligned to the female gender role than you are aligned to the male gender role. So at what point did you not then come out? And how did you come out? Did you come out to your family? Did you come out to your friends? Did you wait until you got the opportunity to travel to Nairobi, which is a bigger city, the capital city of Kenya, where we are, that then you are able to speak your truth? How did you go about it? Because I'm sure this interview will probably help other people, help other young people that may not even have a chance. Maybe they're suppressing themselves. And we see, we'll get later to the effects of exclusion when it comes to transgender inclusion, or or exclusion, and so on and so forth, and the consequences of what happens when we don't include everyone in society. But then just knowing that the longevity of this discussion will be beyond today, beyond whoever is tuning in live, or the people that are live today. How did you manage to come out, and how would you recommend people to be compassionate towards that journey when somebody discloses to them or confides in them about their gender identity?
Number one, it is a hard, I don't know. Well, when we are talking about the African culture, we are mostly talking about the poor people who are actually always in the village and believe in the Bible and in the culture that is fixed in them, but not those people who are in the city. And also people need to remember that there is classism in the African culture. There are rich people whose children went to study abroad, and so were their parents. Those ones are easy to come out to. However, when it's come to my side, you can never ever come to your parents. You can never come out to your parents when you are coming from a village where I am coming from, where marriage is sanctity and being a man, actually the gender man or male is something that is glorified because it is looked at as a god, as superior and supreme, and the continuity of legacy of the families. You cannot come out and say that, hey, listen to me, I am a woman and I'm fabulous and I want to live my life like the Lord made me. You can't do that. So anyway, I started working with Medicine Sans Frontières, which is which is an ungovernmental organization. It's an international NGO. And while I worked with the organization for quite some time, like around 4 years, and I got my strength because then I was able to provide at home, and then I could really get leverage. And it's so funny and interesting how I knew who I was. However, people were calling me gay because during my time, they had no differentiation. Nobody have ever heard of the word transgender, even myself. So whatever they could call me with, I could actually just like not argue about it because that was the only term. Nonetheless, when I came to Nairobi, then I started researching more because I was working with an organization that is called Women Fighting AIDS in Kenya, WOFAC, where I worked also for 3 years.
Wow.
And that was in Kibera DC Health Center. That was where I was based. But then I kept on walking around, working in different hospitals or going for different symposiums and all that. So during this time, I was living all by myself. I was making my money. And I got into the fashion industry. And I don't know if you could, but you guys, I don't know if you could remember me. Maybe you could remember during those times of the catwalk. But I came to Nairobi to start modeling when I had just joined Form 1. And nobody knew.
That is how young you were at the time.
Yes, and nobody.
I remember seeing you in some catwalks. So you were hanging around these fashion circles, but we never really got to talk because I was also a bit reserved.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Yes.
Nonetheless, when now the media started like really paying attention to me, my work started getting noticed. I could always be like around the likes of Rogo Manduli during the Kenya Fashion Awards. So people were just like trying to ask, who is this person who's telling models to start the walk with the left leg instead of walking with the right leg? As you know, Kenya was mostly having the beauty pageantry taking over as compared to fashion industry.
Yes.
High fashion, they were all walking like beauty pageant. So I'm the one who changed it. That no, you need to start the walk from your left and walk from the right. Apart from you, who went for the face of Africa, and you people were taught the right way.
Yeah, I actually got the distinction between high fashion and beauty pageantry, but yeah, it was a struggle.
It was a struggle in the local Kenyan market. So anyway, that is how one day, every now and then, you are around people, and some people would really love to have you around, but then they don't know who you are or what you are, as they could put it. So they could ask you, are you gay? And you could be like, no, I'm not. And they could be just like, oh, you're a pretentious person, you're gay and you don't want to agree. Oh, we saw you looking at so and so like this, or so and so was looking at you like this, and the way you are smiling and getting coy, Letoya, you're just a girl. But then they didn't know the definition. So when Miss Audrey Mbugua came out as a transgender person and started having conversations that were impactful, may God bless her soul. She's really such a wonderful, iconic figure that I do really admire and respect. That was when I started now Googling and trying to find out to know what is this about. So that is how I came to learn about who transgender persons are, and that was when I was like, oh my goodness, this one is exactly who I am.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing is that when I thought that I knew how transgender people work, because I was using my own lived life experience
Uh-huh.
to make
Define
everything
it.
exactly to define it, I came to
Yeah.
realize I was so wrong in several ways. You can be a transgender person and your live life is completely different from how other people are feeling. More so when it comes to personal life, like let's say dating, attraction, what are people attracted to, what do people prefer? There's really a lot that is going on. So it took me some time and I learned several lessons. And nowadays, I'm telling the stories according to my life and not
Right.
all transgender people's lives, apart from when I am talking about general things that are facing us all. Yeah, so it was in Nairobi was when I came out as a transgender person.
And at that time, like you said, you had a job, you were able to provide for your family, and then you worked for an ungovernmental organization that also allowed you to be yourself, right? As a humanitarian organization. So I want to bring the discussion to transgender rights because maybe people out here, especially in our context, may not understand exactly what we mean when we say transgender rights. And just by definition, or rather to define what transgender rights movements are, this is a movement to promote the legal status of transgender people, to eliminate discrimination and end violence against transgender people regarding housing, employment, public accommodation, education, and healthcare. So talk to us a bit more about transgender rights and your experience of transgender rights or lack thereof in Kenya.
Yeah, actually, that is really a good question because this year, just like last week, is it last week or this week? Last week, we were talking about democracy and human rights, and talking about like the human rights. And I came to learn that there is nothing democratic whenever it comes to the transgender persons. I think it is just like across the world. However, I will narrow it down to Kenya because number one, being transgender is not even recognized in any constitution. It is not recognized in the healthcare system. It is not recognized in education system. It is not recognized even in documentation, NSSF, NHIF. Like it's like we are existing in the limbo. So whenever people are talking about dignity and respect to human rights, I always feel we are always left out because number one, you can still see that we are mostly leaning towards what the gay communities are doing. Like whenever we are repealing Article 162, I do believe that we are supporting it because then it is leaning towards us. However, it is not really all that. It's more like giving us way, but we've been left out completely. So we do not have the freedom to movement because there is a constitution. There is a clause in the Kenyan constitution that is stating that someone who is personating can get a jail term. So most of we can be charged with the personation because they think that we are cross-dressing, and this cross-dressing or personating is going to make us engage into we are having ill motives or get into crime and get out scot-free. So that one is putting us into trouble. Most transgender persons are finishing high school, then they come out, and this one interferes with furthering their studies. So most of them always ends up being sex workers. But whenever you are a sex worker, when you are arrested, how do you even identify? So this is the main reason. So all this discrimination, both from the government and from the general public, made us all to come up with what we call National Transgender Survey, which had to, number one, it was like really brought in by the Trans Alliance, which is a non-governmental organization that is based in Kisumu, Western Kenya. And it was to, number one, prove that transgender people do exist and they are there. And it is not only one, and it was not only Miss Audrey Mugwa, it was like a bunch of other people who've not yet come out into the media. So number one, census had to be done for just transgender only, you understand me? So National Transgender Discrimination Survey was to be done. Number one, identifying who the transgender persons are. Number two, counseling them and talking to them and making sure that the data was collected and the statistics was there.
Yes.
Number three, we were to share our lived life experiences. And number three, we were to actually bring about how we are affected by HIV and AIDS, and how we are not able to travel or we are not able to access anything in the government, including the voting process. Because, yeah, somebody's calling me. May I hang the person up?
Yes, please. Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, so as I was saying, all these data were to be collected, the lived life experiences, what we are going through the police, then also the statements that had been recorded, in as much as they were nothing was done, but at least somebody went to the police and came back with what do we call it? Whenever you report, you come back with the OB number.
Yes, yes.
All these OB numbers had to be collected and had to be put, and the police had to be notified. And then also in the court cases, people could be asked things like stripping, and also the transgender people, whenever they are arrested, and let's say they were caught into spaces that could allow them to go to jail, they are still not being put in the women's cells, they are being put into the male cells. So you see, all these systems made you notice that the human rights was not being practiced. And then also, we had to learn the hard way. Number one, you had to learn the language that the government is speaking. Number two, you were to talk and provide evidence, which is data. Number three, when it came to census, we were left out, but the intersex community were, and this is depending with how they've always been fighting and being there. And the intersex persons, they were looking at it like, oh, you know what? This is something that is understandable because it is biological and it is proven by science and biology. And I think at even some point, the United Nations put us into the mental health category because they thought that we were psychotic. Now, that one has been removed right now. When we are talking about workspaces, by the time I came out as a transgender person, that is how my work ended.
What?
And up to date, from the last time that I worked, I think it is like around 4 years ago now, I am a trained HIV counselor, adherent counselor, a counseling psychologist. I have also a certificate in HIV current issues. And apart from that, I'm also a peer educator, both for young people and transgender persons. So before, for the transgender persons, it was just for young people. And you realize that nobody could allow me. And all I could be told is that, Letoya, you really passed and you did a wonderful job. However, we cannot have you get the job. As you know, we are working in the community, and this is the community of Kibera, and they will not feel comfortable with a transgender person dressing as a woman coming to work. was like, oh my God. So I kept on also sending papers to other NGOs and I was not able to get. So my papers are just in the house and I'm not practicing. And that tells you how difficult it is for a transgender person. And whenever we leave that one alone, let us come back to healthcare system. Whenever you go to the hospital, all the hospital documentation, apart from recently that they included the intersex persons, it used to be male or female done. So if you're transgender, you could not get the service or you could not be properly documented. So that is how the data was being left out. And whenever you are going for Kipande or what we call identification card, going to get the identification to be issued by identification card, what they request is your birth certificate. And on your birth certificate, these were the names that were assigned to you at birth, what we call the dead names. For most transgender people, including myself, we are still using the names that were assigned to us at birth. But then, yes, there is only like a leeway through change of names. And this one is not because of the transgender people, no. It is because anyone is allowed to change their name so that when a woman is married to a man, or vice versa, then they are able to change their names into their husband's name.
Right.
So that is how we got away with that. So it becomes a right that, anybody can change their names. But then it will come to the gender marker. Now, when it's come to the gender marker, that one is a story of another time. We are not getting away from that. We are still fighting. So they'd rather put it as a transgender or they make us feel as women. And the only person who only fought for this is Miss Audrey Mbugua, who took the neck in court and they changed all her names in the papers. And also challenged the people who are issuing IDs, and the gender marker was changed, but it was just left blank. From the stories that I hear, I stand corrected. So there is no male, female, or transgender in it. It is just left there blank. And that one is the first success of transgender people that we've ever gotten. So you can imagine driving license, you want to go to get COVID-19 test, but then these politicians who are supposed to be addressing all these things in the parliament are not doing so because they feel that it is too sensitive for them to do so, they will lose votes.
Yeah. So they would rather stay away from that conversation. I wonder who sits in the Human Rights Committee, but we'll get to that. I'm just looking at the data on the discrimination to the transgender community, and I actually see that the transgender persons suffer significant health disparities in multiple areas, and specifically the transgender community experiences healthcare discrimination. In approximately 1 in 4 transgender people were denied equal treatment when they go to access healthcare services. And I know you said it's just beyond, first of all, it starts with the identification, the gender identification, because then the data or the data that ought to be captured is not then captured, and therefore interventions, whether that could guide policy, are not put in place because no one is capturing the data right. What has been your direct experience with that, and what would be that call to action that we should plead as a people that care about human rights in its entirety, such that we talk to them, we address them through this video, and we say, this is what you ought to consider. These are the discussions we ought to have, because today it is me and tomorrow it is your child or your grandchild, and that's when it will come home, and you will now then want to now talk to government, but you will no longer be in government. You will no longer be there to help create this legislation that protects all human rights. Yes.
So, number one, as you know, Diana, just like a few weeks ago, like around 3 weeks ago, while I was working, coming from a private showcase of Kikoromio, which was a Macrate like showcase before they showcased in Nigeria. It was for us players in the fashion industry. to see the looks before they could be showcased in Nigeria, which happens a lot. So on my way coming back home, 2 policemen attacked me in civilian clothes. And it got so ugly that I had to start recording for them to get to know that I'm not joking. And it got me because I'm intelligent enough to ask them, number one, you cannot arrest me when you are in civilian, because you need to, number one, show me a warrant. And yes, I do understand that a police can arrest you without a warrant if you've done something that is beyond needing a warrant. So I did not kill somebody. I'm not doing hard drugs. I am not engaging in money laundering or anything whatsoever. So what could really warrant for my arrest? I rarely don't even go to clubs. You understand? So you can't say that you're confusing me with somebody. I'm a very private person. They attacked me, and the first question that they asked me was, are you a man or a woman?
Wow.
That means they knew who I was. By the time they were asking me that, they yanked out my wig and they were running their hands between my legs. Remember, my skirt was short. And now it's more like they were trying to expose it to the people who were there. And you know, between Prestige and between that Eastland Hotel and the lights, all the street people are always selling there. So you could imagine the kind of embarrassment I went through and the mental health. So I asked them, number one, who are you? And when they said that they are policemen without even saying their names, I asked them, what is your, show me your card that is showing that you're a police officer. Your
badge. Identification, your badge.
Yes, I needed your badge number. I needed to also know who is your senior on duty right now. And then secondly, I needed to know why you are arresting me. And then third, I want to know why whenever you are coming to arrest me, then you're asking me about my gender instead of asking me what my name is. And then I told them, now that we are live and everybody can see you, you claim that you are coming to arrest me. Take me to the police station. They did not take me to the police station whatsoever. Because I told them, no, let us go to the police station. You've arrested me. You said that I did something wrong, because for you to warrant for my arrest or for you to do whatever you've done, including yanking out my hair, you wanted people to see me without my hair for who I am, when I do know who I am. So take me to the police. They never took me to any police. But I lost my passport. I lost my identification card. And apart from that, again, I lost a few of my belongings, including the medicine that I was having in the bag. Because while you are talking to someone, the bag yanks, anything and everything falls out, because actually it was a clutch bag.
Did you manage, sorry, Letoya, did you manage to report this case to now an official police station? And, you know, what's the status with that incident? And I'm very, very sorry for that. I think I saw it on Twitter, and I did see some human rights activists also just, expressing their disappointment in, the cases of abuse from, the men in blue or the men in administration police. And I think, you really got some public support, but I think beyond that, did you get to report the case? Is it being followed through? Do we now know who those officers were, and what is the status of that case?
Yeah, number one, being a human rights defender, thank God at least I was empowered enough to know the procedure to go to. So yes, I went to the police station and I reported I have an OB number, which I did a screenshot and posted it on social media. When I showed them the video, the police officer said, well, it is true, those police officers are our own, and they were on duty on that day. And I think they are giving me full information because I recorded including the car number plate. So if it was not that, it is a case that could have just been thrown away. So
Sure.
the powerful thing here is this police officer is asking me to provide evidence. And this evidence is in form of a witness. I needed to go back to where I was assaulted to get someone to come and write a report because that should be a witness. And I'm like, how can I even get people when those people don't even know them? I was walking on the road. I was coming from work and now I'm heading home. So that tells you the kind of discrimination that is happening more so from police officers. Because let us be realistic. We've trained several police officers on transgender issues. Even the DCI himself knows about the transgender issues and who these transgender persons are. And this is the reason as to why we are getting confident going to the police station to report a police. Because if it weren't because of that, then it could have been tough. So nonetheless, I reported, I've got it, and I'm still waiting for them to investigate. Things are still quiet, but hopefully something will be done. And as you all know, I also don't want to put myself at risk and become the police number one enemy, whereby whenever they look for me, they want to shoot me or they want to do harm to me. As you know, Kenya is a corrupt country, and sometimes things don't really happen well. So that is why I'm also slowing down, because I'm also not getting support from either other human rights. I'm not getting full support from any organization that is just like, you know what, Letoya, let us go with you and take you there. Let us remove you from where you live so that we can take you to a safe space. Oh, Letoya, let us offer counseling, psychology because of the trauma you went through. Oh, Letoya, let us like really try to find out how you are feeling and get to see what we can do. Nothing that has happened. And this tells you that people, whenever, whether it is non-governmental organization or human rights defenders in Kenya, they could be talking, but on social media, or when they are talking, they could be talking to the DCI. But personally, I've never seen anybody who's calling me to put me down and talk to me and tell me, Letoya, we are holding your hand. We want to be offering you this vehicle, you go with them, and then as you're writing your statement, we would want to be there as witnesses as we get to see this thing followed up for us to get to know the way forward. I've not seen that. So it is more like a thing all by myself, but I'm not blaming anyone because people do their things the way they do. I'm just picking my experience.
Your own experience. Yeah, I think offline we can have more discussion on exploring the different organizations that could probably work with you. I know FIDA is an institution that has helped women that have needed support, and they're very good in human rights advocacy, and many others. I mean, I can't think of them on top of my mind. I know, you know, I reached out to you some time back as well to just try and see how do we support you with this cause. But now, if you're now thinking of changing laws, what are some of the discriminatory laws in Kenya now that ought to be changed and that you can speak to, so that later when we now convene outside this podcast, we join those technical working groups that actually address members of parliament or members of the county assembly, that they can actually now start looking to review laws and policies that discriminate different people in the community?
I think number one, these people who are always sitting down to maybe advise the members of the parliament or the public opinions need to understand that number one, before you even win in the parliament, you have to win in the public opinion phases first, because in Kenya, the public opinion matters more than any other thing. And I think that is the reason as to why we are still working towards the repeal of Article 162 of the Constitution. Number two, women like us are not able to give birth to children. So some of us might sought to adopt, and then adoption, you know very well how the Constitution has put it in a way that if you are a woman, you can't adopt a male child and vice versa. So when you are a transgender person, it even makes it so hard. Number 3, I would want the discussion to be arranged in Parliament so that documentation of transgender people, number 1, acknowledgement of transgender people, number 2, documentation can be made easier for us, because once they know who we are and we are documented and everything is there, it means that whenever we make a mistake, we will be making a mistake either as citizens of Kenya, or whenever we are doing well, then we are going to be doing well as citizens of Kenya. So we need to be either uploaded or whichever way, or be certified as so. I also feel like the gender marker of male and female in both primary, nursery school, and even a high school need to be stopped, and the gender marker should be left open with only people's names. That is something that should be addressed, because people tend to find who they are later on in life. There should be just something like maybe a thumbprint to show that this is so and so, and when all your fingerprints are put there, whenever you are in trouble, then so and so can be brought in. You understand me? Because,
you know what is, yes. Sorry, go on.
Because even if they put like the male and female, but while people are growing up, then they need to give people the authority to change who they are. And before they do that, because the gazetting is being done, they also need to run a background check and get to see if you've got maybe some other things that you might have done. So people with clean slate like Letoya, we are supposed to go there, and it's supposed to be made easy. Just bring your identification card or your birth certificate and everything to be run and put. Because I'm feeling like once they allow the transgender people to be who they are, and they create the gender marker that really represent who transgender persons are, then we are going to change our documents, because these names were given to our parents. That's why later on we change our names, so that we could be feminine, and then the gender expression could come complete. Then also they need to also have hospitals where transgender persons can go for a HIV checkup, but at the same time can be able to access hormonal therapy for those people who want to transition. You understand me? They also need to create hospitals where surgeries can be done in case a transgender person would want one, and also create a counseling system that is into different stages, so that by the time somebody is going for the surgery, then they shall have made the needed decision to finally transition to who they would want to be. And when all these things are aligned, then the confusion of like, oh, you are really personating someone for you to do something bad is going to stop, because then both the police and people, and then lastly, education about who transgender people are need to start from let's say from high school, or from upper primary school. That topic need to be introduced, and they need to be told about the diversity, how diverse the gender is, because gender is not just binary. Gender is beyond binary. So there are intersex person there, so that people don't grow up scared. Because imagine people who are living with disability and are transgender persons, how the process is even
how much more difficult it is.
Exactly. So my ask is that, number one, these people need to really create a criteria within which all the transgender persons need to pass. Number two, I know very well that through the Ministry of Health, the HIV and AIDS and STI program is actually acknowledging the transgender persons, and that's the reason as to why we are developing a template within which the transgender people are able to be addressed whenever they come to seek for healthcare. And this is in regards to HIV and AIDS and related illnesses, including STIs. But then now we want it to be broadened to an extent that if a transgender man chooses to have a baby when they are married to a transgender woman, then it's okay for them to go to the hospital, but can be still addressed as sir, Mr., them, they, if they are non-binary persons. So all these things will make even our traveling documents really be easier to be accessed by people. We can have the names we want, and then we are able, people are not going to attack us because everybody will be aware, because they say education is power. And when people are empowered, then we don't look like threats.
Right. So I've gotten some of the recommendations you've made, and I want to say I agree with most of them. Maybe the one that I think may be very difficult to enforce is the removing of the gender marker altogether at the point of birth, or maybe during human development. And I think what I can suggest in that place, and these are conversations that will happen even beyond us, is possibly just having responsive policies. The same way you are saying, a female person, when they get married, they can change their names and take over their spouse's name. It should be also, there should be that allowance for a transgender person to pick on a feminine name that identifies with themselves. Then there's also the changes. For example, the status of a person living with disability. An accident can happen, and then you change your status, and now you become a person living with disability. So maybe just having those responsiveness. And in fact, the reason why I've put the recommendation you made is because it really spoke to me. It actually says, you actually say, develop a criteria for identifying transgender persons. So there's a criteria developed, and then when they sit down and they say, I have checked this, I have checked that, I do not identify with the gender that was assigned to me at birth. It is not who I am. I am not here. I am sure about so and so. And then we move on. And Letoya, just looking at the last conversation I had on the podcast, this is episode 23, with Dr. Simon Kigondu, who is the chairman of the Kenya Medical Association. And I asked him about this. I asked him about what he thinks about exclusion of transgender people in the health space. And Dr. Kigondu actually challenged me, and he told me that, when you over-specialize on certain things that should be human rights or human needs that ought to be given, their public needs, the public or the government ought to give them these services. When you over-specialize and you say, oh, today I want youths, or I want whatever women, I want men included in the health space, then that's where we lose the plot. How about we call government to action and we say, provide adequate or sufficient medical care to all persons, not transgender persons, not young women, not young men, all men. And then this is just him, I think, trying to ask us. And then he was saying, currently there is a huge gap when it comes to medical service caregivers. So the doctors, the nurses, they're understaffed. So imagine then saying, oh, I need specialized service for these people. It's actually very difficult. So he called upon us and he said, when you're fighting for inclusion, or you're advocating, or being an activist for human rights, access to healthcare, do it in its totality, such that any person that goes to hospital can get a surgery if they need, regardless of their gender identity, and so on and so forth. So I don't know whether there was merit in that. There is room for conversation. I am not saying, for me, I just when I bring guests to the podcast, I also keep an open mind so I can learn some things. I can't come to the podcast and say, I know everything. I'm just going to have a conversation. I actually keep very open and try to learn from my guests. And that is a challenge that he gave us. But kindly give us your closing remarks. I know you want to respond to some of the things I've said as we close the podcast. Yes. Go on, Letoya.
So number one, what that gentleman is saying is like,
yes.
Yes, it's like saying that, oh, the Americans should not say the Black Lives Matter. They need to say all lives matter. The reason as to why we are specifying it as transgender person and we are fighting for equality, inclusivity, and democracy to be included in those spaces, we want to make sure that this is a transgender issue and it is not just everybody's issue. In as much as it is involving other people, it is more on transgender person. So number one, we have to use the transgender and be specific about it. So then later on we can do that. Because when people are fighting about women's rights, transgender persons are not included. They are talking about the cisgender woman who's outside there. So you will be told, oh, you are not a woman. There was a time I was sitting in a certain space, and then it was during the discussion of the sex work and HIV-related infections and threats and security matters. And then the women who are cisgender, binary women said that, oh, there's actually binary people said that as sex workers, you can't put us with the transgender person. They don't have a vagina. So all these things are happening on the ground. Then now, if he's really talking about like everybody to be given equal, all things equal, right now we are heading towards voting. Everybody is asking us for votes. And these votes, for you to have a voter's card, then that means that you've got to use your ID. For you to get your ID, it means that you have to submit your birth certificate. And by your birth certificate, where do you get it? From the hospital. So when they want us, these people are smart enough to tell us, oh, Letoya, you just need to use your name that is on your birth certificate, including that gender marker that is there, for you to vote for me. And then when I go there, then I will make sure that I address this. And I'm like, you people have been here. Why haven't you been addressing it? Has it not been a taboo conversation? So that's why we are taking it upon ourselves to fight for our rights as human beings, so that before it becomes all inclusive, then we need to make people understand that we are there. This is who we are. This is how we were created biologically, and this is who we are now. And this is how we'd want you to see us. Because yes, as much as we are going to pretend, people always want to peruse and get to find out what is happening in bed. Because somebody meets them and they will argue, oh, don't you have this and this between your legs? Can it function this way and this way? And you're telling them, listen, it is not like this. Like they say, can it function this way? Then immediately you tell them, oh, yes, it can really get hard. Yes, it can really do this. Okay, then why can't it not do its job? So you see, the topic here is about the genitalia more and how they... And instead of looking at us as the women and men that we are. And when we are fighting for these are human rights things. And that is why Dr. Wangari Maathai said in her book, Unbowed, that human rights are not just things that you put on the table and then you enjoy. These are things you fight for and then you protect them.
Yes.
So we are fighting for them and we are protecting. The problem is not transgender people. The problem is not women. The problem is not people who are pro-women. The problem is with the system that has given man power. Because man, even in the Bible, even from the ancient time, man was the only person who would be able to talk to God. A woman was actually looked at as dirty and was not able to pray or to go to church when they were going through their menstrual period. Something that is biological, that only that God created. We grew up knowing very well that all the people that are being spoken about in the Bible or that are superior are cisgender men. So men even started having money, and when a man is having wealth, it is more profound as compared. Most CEOs are actually men. When there is something that is going to happen. So we've been created in a patriarchal society where if it is not a man, then the point is not yet home. Even right now, a man can attack a whole Nairobi women rep and expose the nudes of other people, or actually like bring out the conversations between them. And then it's still going to be Like people are just going to call her, oh, this one is given this kind of name, which is either prostitute, as if prostitution is bad, or they want to make people feel like women do not use their brains, but they use whatever is between their legs. So imagine coming to transgender persons. These issues become technical issues because, number one, the African society do not even embrace us. Even when used to before, nobody used to talk about it because people like us used to be there in the African community and the society, but people used to look at us as God, and or they could not talk or do anything bad about it. So that way violence was not there because they couldn't understand what God had created and how they could really like perceive it. So it was like, don't touch what the Lord has made or what the universe has brought forth, because you don't know the kind of party you're going to get. So there was never violence. However, when now it comes to the Christianity, the Bible is talking too much, and the Bible is giving only power to the men and women and not transgender persons. And this kind of thing makes Christians to hate transgender people. And you know very well that Kenya is a country that is mostly dominated by Christianity from colonial period. So this one puts us at risk. Okay. This one puts us at risk of violence. So the Bible don't agree with you. The Bible is talking, and remember the Bible is rooted from BC. All the way. So all this generation, it comes up. So one thing that I will say, or my last parting shot, is that transgender persons are human, and for that reason they're also citizens. They are sisters, they are brothers to some other people. They are more than what is between their legs that people are speculating. They are beyond the clothes and the lipstick and the makeup that they wear as women, or beyond the beards if they are transgender men. People need to look at us as citizens who are contributing to the tax in Kenya as taxpayers. We are also people who are able to vote, given the opportunity and listened to and having the right documentation. And we are also people who get sick like other people, and we might need medical healthcare services from health providers, and these health service providers need to be educated and empowered on who transgender persons are and how to treat them so that it can prevent violence. And also the police, lawmakers, and peacekeepers, so that they can protect us rather than attacking us or putting us as if we are personating or cross-dressing. Having the thought of doing evil things or going against the law is something that they cannot eradicate. That is why the police is there. Because if it could be stopped there, they could not be having jobs. So they are just bad people. They are just bad people, but they are not transgender persons. Transgender persons are just living their truth. And another thing, I'm challenging people, the human rights defenders in Kenya and the organizations and the healthcare sectors, including in the police and the workplaces, need to create toilets that are gender neutral, so that transgender persons can get into the toilets without having any problems, because those are not there. I'm so glad that they've created spaces for transgender, for people living with disability. But being a transgender person, whenever people are saying, oh, but you people are few, why should we change the things? This is how they need to look at it. Everything that is created, whether it is the 13th floor, has got the area where people living with disability are supposed to follow. This does not mean that people with disability are coming to these buildings every day. In fact, sometimes they don't come, but that consideration is there. So we also, so we also need to have such kind of privileges, or not even, I don't call it a privilege, those kind of like reality that is there, that there are transgender persons, and whenever we seek medical or whenever we go to the police, people don't need to ask us who are transgender persons, so tell me about who you are. Do you have two things We don't want to
Exactly.
be
The
explaining what is
speculation.
rather
Yes.
addressing the issue that is at hand about myself being attacked by a police or the problem that is at hand. So,
Yes.
and also giving opportunity to transgender persons both in the health sector, in the police, in the army, and also allowing transgender persons to be able to vie for these positions of power so that we
Right.
don't become people who are being called in the room but not being called to the table where decision is being made.
And
Because
that's why we talk about inclusive diversity. Sorry, Letoya, I'm going to have to say thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. We're a little over 1 hour, and it's been a lovely discussion. It may not end here. Clearly, there's need to keep engaging more. You're right. In fact, I'm so glad that you've ended this conversation with talking about inclusion, even in leadership, so that you're not only being called to a discussion, and after that you go and the cis male and the cis female go ahead to lead all the community members. So asante sana Letoya, have a blessed evening. We'll continue talking, and you and I definitely have to talk more about actualizing some of the ideas that you have. All
thank
right.
you so much. Forward
Thank
to it.
you.
Thank you, Diana, for having me. May God bless you.
God bless you too. Have a good night. And
And
thank you
thank
to
you.
everybody that tuned in. Thank you for your comments. Asanteni sana.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, love.
Bye.
Bye.